So I know one thing we really want to talk about was self-care. You kind of talk about how when you first had Lila, or it was kind of like this pivot, I will use the word again, this pivot in everything where you realize, oh, I'm the bottom of the totem pole now. I'm last. And a lot of moms get caught up in that where everything and everyone is before them and they don't give themselves the 5 minutes to decompress, to take time for themselves. So what's something you've learned over the years, or what's something that you make sure is a priority in your life now to make sure you get that self-care?
I think first was, well, like to rewind a little bit, when we met with our mentors, Jordan and I, going into we had a 5-year plan, and it was literally part of the plan that we called it Optimize Jordan. We need to make it so this kid can finish school and make $1 because that was our plan. And so I took on a supporting role, like very intentionally, like this is what the first 5 years are going to be. And we did that. But I think that what happened next, I think Lila was 3 months old when I was like, okay, I'm doing a lot of the big crying and feeling very desperate all the time. I need help. And I remember carrying that bucket car seat into the YMCA, my local YMCA. I didn't know anyone. We had moved to a new town when we had her. And I walked in and I just remember this woman at the front desk, her name was Tanya. I just kind of looked at her and was like, hi, can you help me? And she walked around the desk, took Lila in the bucket and gave me a tour of the Y. And she was like, you can shower here. And I was like, how long? She's like, as long as you want. And there was childcare and there were fitness classes that I could take. And I just felt like that was a huge step for me. And that step led to more steps towards community and finding people who could run with me out here, like finding friends and also finding people who are passionate about the same things as me. But then the other side of that is when we look at what self care even is, it has to be allowed to look different for each person and also different for you depending on the day. Just because I love to run, that's self care for me. Other people, that is not self care. That is hurting yourself and making you sad inside. And so we have to be allowed to define that term ourselves.
Mhm.
And something that really helped me was a podcast about this, actually, but I think it was on Sort of Awesome. They talked about self care and they define self care as something that leaves you feeling self respect and connection. And so I use that to figure out what in my whole toolbox of self care is going to leave me feeling self respect and also connection with myself, community, my family, just who I really am. And then within those two qualifiers, I kind of can go into physical, emotional, and mental
Mhm.
care. So
Mhm.
sometimes I feel self respect and connection when I'm taking a bubble bath and reading a book in the bath. You hold it up. You can't get library books wet. Or self care could be, a really intense workout because I've got to just let it all out kind of. And so realizing that every time I'm sad, it's not always going to be bubble bath and book, or every time I'm stressed, it's not always going to be working out, but giving myself freedom to change my mind and change and grow as a person, and also change the kind of tools that I use out of my self care toolbox, I guess.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point because I think so many times we see self-care is bubble baths and doing this. I think it's really important to look inward and be like, well, what makes me like feel cared for and loved, and how am I treating my body and my mind? Because yeah, like you said, for some people, running and bubble baths sound like a nightmare.
yeah.
Some people don't like it. So I think we need to evaluate what feels good for us that day, or what we crave or need that day.
And there's also room, sometimes you want self comfort, and that's great. Comfort yourself, eat the chocolate bar or whatever you're craving, and comfort yourself. Watch all of a season of a show on Netflix. You can comfort yourself too, as long as you're also doing actual care for yourself as a person along the way.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So now you talk a little bit about community, and I think that's so important too. We talk here about how important community is, and that transition to becoming a mom, you need community around you, whether it's in person, your neighborhood, or it's online, just people that are going to be there to kind of support you along in your journey as well. And so that's amazing that you like made that first step and like went into the why and just like not knowing anyone. And I remember interviewing someone a couple years back where she said like one of the big things for her was finding a gym with a daycare. And she's like, that was my me time. She's like, I knew they were taken care of in the building I was in, and it gave me that clear space where I could just be me.
Yeah. And you're better for them for it. I
Mhm.
remember, well, first of all, once the kids like realized we had a tot spot, I think they've changed the name since. Once they like figured out how fun tot spot was, like they were my workout accountability because they're like, it's Wednesday, let's go, and they love it. And you pick them up and they're happier and you're like a better mom for it. So it's not a selfish thing. You actually give those around you a better version of yourself when you take that time.
Mhm. Definitely.